In 1772, amateur sumo wrestlers in present-day Niigata were performing to raise money for a local temple when a pair of sumo pros crashed their event. These wrestlers from the Tokyo Sumo Guild claimed that only their guild had the right to charge audiences admission. But when the pros tried making off with ticket money, one was killed and the other barely escaped alive. Back in Tokyo, the guild took their case to a magistrate. They argued that because they were the only guild that adhered to sumo's most ancient practices, no other performers in the country were legitimate. The magistrate accepted this claim, but surprisingly, these so-called ancient practices were actually recent inventions. So, what were these fabricated traditions, and how do they relate to sumo's true history? Our earliest reliable records of sumo come from the 8th century, when performances were held as entertainment for annual court banquets. During these events, wrestlers were summoned from across Japan as a demonstration of the emperor's influence. Initially, these wrestlers would punch, scratch, and grab their opponents, claiming victory by forcing their hands or knees to the ground. But eventually, matches began focusing on grappling and tripping techniques. Over time, power shifted from the emperor and his court to their hired soldiers, the samurai, and official court sumo ended in 1174. However, samurai leaders still had soldiers perform less formal sumo bouts for exercise and entertainment. Throughout imperial and samurai rule, sumo was performed across Japan for sport, spectacle, and martial training. But in the 1400s, it took on a new function: fundraising. Shrines and temples began hosting performances to raise money for construction and repairs. And since skilled performers brought in more customers, event promoters were eager to enlist the best wrestlers. This led performers to create the first sumo guilds, ensuring steady employment and improving their working conditions. Once wrestlers could reliably make money through sumo, they became eager to perform for as many paying customers as possible. Enterprising young men put on rowdy street corner sumo performances, hoping to attract the donations of passers-by. Lacking the organization of formal performances, these bouts often resulted in fights and injuries among both participants and spectators. So it didn't take long for samurai authorities to crack down, periodically banning all forms of sumo in larger cities. Wrestlers and organizers knew they needed to make changes to overcome these bans. First, they established a boundary to separate spectators from participants. This boundary took many forms, but over the 17th century it morphed into a standard ring called the dohyo. This ring outlined the field of play, introducing a pivotal new rule. Now matches could also be won by pushing one's opponent out of the dohyo. This innovation increased the advantage of heavier wrestlers, whose weight already helped them topple their opponents. But sumo's journey to become a respectable sport really took off when promoters began introducing rituals to associate sumo with Japan's ancient past. Wrestlers threw salt in the ring and rinsed their mouths with water before matches, actions that evoked ancient religious ceremonies. These invented traditions imbued the sport with cultural legitimacy, convincing authorities that sumo was above board. One notable ritual emerged in 1789, when the Tokyo Guild began having their top-ranked wrestlers perform a ring-entering ceremony, wearing a sacred rope called the yokozuna. This innovation became so popular, the shogun himself summoned the troupe for a performance, giving legitimacy not just to the Tokyo Guild, but specifically to their invented traditions. After the shogunate was overthrown in 1868, sumo was seen as a dated relic and briefly fell out of fashion. But the sport gradually remade itself for the modern era, and today Japan holds 6 15-day tournaments every year, all of which are broadcast worldwide. New technology has brought advantages like instant replays, while other innovations were introduced to evoke the ancient past. And over the last century, the average body weight in the upper division has increased by over 60 kilograms. But throughout its changes, sumo has sustained its status as a beloved form of entertainment, a grand display of strength and an ode to national traditions, both real and invented. If you enjoy learning about history, subscribe to this channel, because the lessons of yesterday can help us face the challenges of today.